Dr. Welcome Richard, who will provide a presentation on critical analysis of the source concerning the encounter Buhira of the monk and the Prophet Muhammad. Richard is a medical student from University of Notre Dame. He has been with HIKMA and is currently in our research team specializing in Eastern Christianity. I'd like to welcome him and his presentation.
Thank you. So while I'm setting up the USB, hands up how much people know about Buhira or know who Buhira is. Yeah, so you have one person? Okay. So the reason why I'm giving you a talk about Buhira, you may ask, is this relevant? Is because Western scholarship often understands the Prophet Muhammad from the viewpoint of Buhira. And there are some good things they say, and there are also some bad things they say. And I called it a critical analysis because I will be showing you even the bad things they say about the Prophet Muhammad. So, yeah. Yep. So, it's okay, I can just hold it, it's fine. Okay, so who is Buhira? So Buhira was the name of a Nestorian or Christian monk who lived in Syria. And Hassan rightly pointed out that the Prophet Muhammad, according to traditions, traveled twice in his life outside the Arabian, or kind of inside the Arabian Peninsula, but kind of near Byzantium. And one of those was to Syria. Now there are two versions of this story. There's the Byzantine version and the Islamic version. There are some historical accounts of this in Ibn Sa'd, and they say that a young man went to Syria near Bostra, and he was recognized as a prophet by a monk. Okay, so that's all it says. It just says it was by a monk. Nestorian Christianity is very complex, so I won't explain what it is, but there are some sources which say that there was kind of areas of Nestorianism in the Arabian area, a little northeast of Medina, and even wandering monks who would wander around Arabia visiting great fairs and preaching to such who were willing to listen to them. So this is how a modern Nestorian monk looks like, but we don't know if that's how they looked like back in the day. So Nestorius was just someone who came up with a concept of understanding the Christology of Jesus Christ. He was one to famously say, God is not a baby 2 or 3 years, month old, and I refuse to worship such. Just very quickly, that was Nestorian's view. This is a very complex Christology, so I don't have time to go into it. Arian was another person who came up with a concept that he realized that Christians were saying that Jesus was getting tired and things like that, and he was saying, well, how can they claim him to be God if he does things like get tired and need food and need water and things like that? And both Arian and Nestor, or Nestorius, were deemed as heretics by the Council of Nicaea. So, in one of the accounts, Buhira is also known as Sergius the monk. Okay, so when I read the account to you, it refers to him. So let's start with the Ibn Hisham version of the encounter. So I'll summarize it. Essentially what happens was Abu Talib is going on a caravan to Syria, and he brings the young prophet along. At this time he's probably about 12, but we don't actually know the exact age. And they're going to Syria, to trade or whatever it is. And then suddenly this Buhira guy comes and stops his caravan and says, why don't you guys come in for a drink, and some food? And they're like, there's, you know, like, what gives? But anyway, they went inside and they start eating. And then Buhira says to Abu Talib and the people, did you make sure you brought everyone here? And he's like, yeah, everyone's here. And he's like, are you sure you brought every single one? He's like, well, there is this one boy, and his name is Muhammad, and he's minding the caravan outside. And Buhira says to him, why didn't you bring him in? I told you to bring every single one here. So they're like, yeah, you're right. You know, we should have just leave the Muhammad there by himself. So they went and got Muhammad there inside. And as Buhira was coming to see the Prophet, he saw a cloud like kind of open up, according to the story, and the trees were like following him as he walked. And he said that he said, "Oh, you people of Quraysh, leave no one behind you deprived of food, etc., etc." And when he saw the Prophet, he's like, you are a prophet, and he told everyone that, you are a prophet. And then, according to the story, Buhira actually talks to the Prophet Muhammad, and Buhira says, "Tell me by Al-At and Al-Uzza, answer the questions I ask. I adjure you by Al-At and Al-Uzza." And then the Prophet says, "Do not ask me by Al-At and Al-Uzza, and for I have never hated anything more intensely than these two." So the reason why the Buhira starts off with Al-At and Al-Uzza is because he thinks that he will confide with that oath if he says it like that. But then he quickly realizes that this child does not like swearing by those names. And then apparently Buhira looks at his back and discovers the seal of prophecy, which I've been told is a mole, and I don't know what significance that has, but Buhira pretty much confirms the apostles' prophecy. And then he asks more questions to Abu Talib, saying, where's this boy's father, where's this boy's mother? And then Buhira says, I'm warning you now that the Jews will try to kill him, and so you have to, hide him, and then, they departed quickly and went back to Syria. So the summary of account is Buhira invites the caravan of the Qurayshis over for dinner. Buhira meets the Prophet Muhammad as a kid and tells him that he would be a prophet and that many people would try and kill him. And then at this age we see that Muhammad was quite precocious, and he knows at the age of 9 and 12 that he already knows that Allah and Al-Uzza and all of those were not true gods. Now, not all Muslims accept this story. And this is actually an icon, so you can see here the cloud, and I think this is supposed to be an angel, but anyway, so this is the young prophet, and this is Buhira bowing down, and even the camels are bowing. Oh no, sorry, this is Buhira here, and this is the people coming to invite him over. So this is actually the monastery of Buhira in modern day Syria, if you guys want to visit it. And that's where they said that, he saw him from the window, one of these windows. So now I'll talk to you about the Byzantine version of the legend. So there's two versions, the Arabic and the Syriac. And this is not, it says here a Christian Buhira legend, but not all Christians A, know about this story, and B, believe in this story. This is, I think, a Byzantine account. So other sects of Christianity do not even know or care about this. So the Christian account is that Buhira was ejected from Christianity because he was a heretic, okay? And then he wandered off into the Arabian Peninsula, and then he started teaching the Arabs about a prophecy that one day they would become a great nation. So the Arabs at the time, they liked what he was saying, and so for that reason they gave him the name Buhira, which supposedly means tested by God and approved. Now, what happened was that they used to give him water and things like that, and then yeah, so it says he so he starts having like a vision, this Buhira person, and he sees that there will be a son of Muhammad or a child of Hashem who will come out and will have a great kingdom. And that's why when he saw the prophet, he was saying that, he's going to be, a great kingdom. Now, I did a bit of digging up to see what Buhira could have possibly been talking about. And there is a Old Testament prophecy which says, "As for Ishmael, I have heard you. Behold, I will bless him, and will make him fruitful and multiply him exceedingly. He shall become the father of 12 princes, and I will make him a great nation." So this is a prediction that some people say Buhira was referring to. Now, this is the controversial part. According to the account, it was Buhira who had given the Prophet Muhammad the Quran. Okay. Yeah, and look, it's a massive account, and there's portions where Muhammad and Sargis, so Sargis is Buhira, remember how I said, and he's talking back and forth to Muhammad. So Muhammad asks him, who is God? And then Buhira replies. Then he says, well, how do I pray? And then Buhira tells him how to pray. And then he's like, well, how do I fast? And then Buhira tells him how to fast. And this goes back and forth dialogue. And they talk about things like the Messiah and things like that, about Ramadan, about paradise, what's in heaven. It's a very long account. And even another controversial thing is Buhira apparently teaches him to say Bismillah and all that kind of stuff. So to understand what Western scholarship thinks about Muhammad, I had to dig up of dates contemporary with the Prophet. So here is a man called John of Damascus. He lived in 675 AD. And he said some pretty harsh things about the Prophet. So he says, from that time, a prophet appeared among them, surnamed Muhammad, who, having chanced upon the Old and the New Testament, and apparently having conversed in a like manner with Aryan monk, Buhira, put together his own heresy. And this was in his text, the heresy of the Ishmaelites. And we also see, now this is a very, another disturbing thing. It says that his revelation was and this is how the Byzantines explained away the revelation of Jibril. They say that he was epileptic, and they said that because of this, he didn't want to upset Khadija, so he said, so he wanted to explain away his epilepsy by saying, I keep seeing a vision of a certain angel called Gabriel, and being unable to bear his sight, I would faint down and fall. Okay? Now, I think this is a bit of a harsh criticism because a lot of people say things about somebody's condition, medical condition, when personally I study medicine, and I know that for a fact that most people who have epilepsy don't actually get visions. They actually become almost unconscious. And a lot of blame gets put on a lot of people. Even Paul the Apostle, they said, he was just somebody who was deluded and who had these visions and he was sick, and it's a cheap argument to explain away some things. And so there's more kind of quotes like this, okay? And the other accusations of Muhammad is that he received the doctrine of monotheism from Sargis Buhira, okay? Another interesting quote was Buhira actually became a disciple of the Prophet Muhammad. And in my reading of the Quran, it seems that the Prophet possibly was aware of this, because he was accused of somebody saying that, you know, it says, and we certainly know that they say it is only a human being who teaches the Prophet, okay? And I think, and the Prophet rightfully kind of tells him that this is, you know, this is an issue. So essentially how I can explain it is that this was possibly written in reaction to the Saracens who were there at the time, who were kind of taking over or wanted to take over the Byzantines, and the Byzantines were sitting there thinking, okay, so how do we explain how this army grew up, you know? And I personally believe it was a reactionary account. I think it was a kind of a reactionary account at the time. So we have two sources of this. We have, for the Byzantine account, we have an oral tradition and a written tradition, and for the Islamic account, we have a written account in the 9th century, but we don't have an oral account. But that doesn't mean that there isn't an oral account, but it's not there. So my conclusion is that from the Ibn Hashim point of view, Buhira was a pious monk who deemed Muhammad as a great prophet. The prophet would be persecuted by Jews, and at an early age he knew that he could reject idolatry. From the Byzantine account, Buhira was a heretical monk of the Arian persuasion. He was excommunicated, and he transmitted his knowledge to Muhammad, who included it in his Quran. Now, I had another little section. Did Muhammad have contact with other people at the time? So Hassan was pointing out how there was possible instances, we don't know if they are legitimate accounts or not, of letters to the Byzantine emperor, to letters to Negus, the Ethiopian ruler, to letters to Munzir, to the ruler of Egypt, and other kind of requests to invite them to Islam. And we see that in some historical citations, we see that that there could have been a possibility that merchants and other people came and visited Medina. We see that in the Arabs of history, it says that there could have been a percolation of inhabitants from the desert. This is actually interesting, that the Kaaba needed rebuilding. And in Mecca, there was actually a Copt who was a carpenter who was recruited to fix the Kaaba. And we see that there could have been periodical fairs in Mecca, and people who also wanted to come to pilgrimage. So a lot of people think that, you know, it was only the Arabs that wanted to attend pilgrimage, but there were some other people who wanted to attend pilgrimage. We also see in Ethiopia, there was a Coptic form of Ethiopia. Now this is where I'll start my debate. So the talk's finished, but I'll start breaking this down. So the traditional view of the Prophet Muhammad was that he was illiterate, he was an Ummi, okay? And a lot of people say that because of this, he couldn't have known anything for 40 years until his revelation on the mountain. it seems as though what their arguments are saying is that even if he was illiterate, it is still possible to interact socially with other groups at the time. Now, for me, this doesn't in any way detract from his prophethood, because it takes an equally a greater prophet to have ideas, but still to submit to the angel Jibreel telling him to recite. A lot of people say that the Quran becomes more miraculous because he was illiterate. But in my opinion, if you have something like the Quran, which is miraculous in itself, you can't add infinity by the receiver. So you can't add infinity to infinity simply because someone is illiterate. The Quran is ipso facto the miracle itself. And I think the illiteracy was only a sign to validate this, that yes, the Quran was miraculous. But I think a different opinion to take is that the Prophet, despite being illiterate, was intelligent. And this isn't just brain knowledge. I was reading once that there are 12 types of intelligence. There's social, yeah? Gardner?
Gardner's theory.
Oh, is that Gardner's theory? Okay. There's literary knowledge, literary intelligence, social intelligence, emotional intelligence. There's even mathematical intelligence.
Music.
Huh? Musical intelligence. And in today's society, we focus more on the robotic forms of intelligence, like simply being able to recall facts or being able to do mathematical. But for me, a person can still be illiterate and still be intelligent. And I think that's what we need to promote, a culture of intelligence. So a lot of people, they almost boast that the Prophet was illiterate, as if it was a good thing. But being illiterate in itself is not the good thing, nor does it make the Quran more miraculous. The miracle was in the Quran itself, and the illiteracy didn't mean that he was not intelligent. Now, as to whether there could be a prospect of him interacting with other groups, I would say most definitely. But I don't think this diminishes his prophethood. We see in a lot of accounts him interacting with the rabbis at the time, asking them, they brought a woman, an adulteress, and they said to the Prophet Muhammad, what are you going to do with her? What does the Torah say? And they said that the Torah says that we should whip her. And the Prophet goes, no, it doesn't. It says that you should stone her. Okay, so he was correcting them. So,
Excuse me, Prophet Muhammad said stone her?
yes.
According
To the text, because he was clarifying that they actually misinterpreted the text. Yeah. This is, by the way, this is a hadith account. So
I don't get it. You mean that he was going to the extreme?
No. So what happened was that the rabbis were brought an adulterous woman, right, to punish her. And the Prophet Muhammad, according to the text, was either standing around or he was brought by them. And they said to him, what shall we do with her? So the Prophet says, what does it say in the Torah? And the rabbi said, it says to whip her. And then the Prophet says, no, it doesn't. It says to stone her. In other words, he was kind of correcting their understanding of their own Torah. This is a hadith account, so take it with a grain of salt. But
I think he completely misunderstood.
oh yeah, like well, no, this is not my interpretation. Yeah, but I think we could give more kind of credit to the Prophet as being an intelligent man, someone who is able to accept ideas at that time and still allowing himself to remain, to submit to the angels' recitations. I think in the first 12 years of his life, or 15 years of his life, he may have been secluded, because we know in that area he barely traveled, he was with his community. But I think as he grew older and as he traveled more with the caravan, He may have been, like us human beings, listening to other ideas at that time, but that doesn't necessarily mean that he becomes less of a prophet because of that. And Hassan made a good difference between civilization and, was it civilization and culture? Yeah. So it could be that he had very little encounter with civilization, but I think, judging from some of the historical texts, it could be that he was well formed in the cultures at that time, because at the end of the day he would write up the constitution of Medina, and to do these things he needed to have cooperated with the Jews living at that time, and this needs a certain basic knowledge, if you wish, which again I think we detract when we call him Ummi, which is almost nothing to be kind of boasted at. It's an unfortunate thing that he was born an orphan, and but I still think that despite this he was an intelligent man, and that's the legacy that I'll bring to the conference, is that we shouldn't think that being intelligent somehow diminishes the miraculousness of the Quran or diminishes his prophethood, because a prophet should be judged by his words, by the correctness of his message, by how much it brings them to God, rather than whether he had a particular seal, or whether he was illiterate, or whether he was from a particular tribe or something. What defines a prophet is his message, and I don't think those things affect them. So thank you very much for that.